I have my own dream as an American that the people who we elect to run the government are actually the people who run the government. Thank you. It may seem like that's not a lot to ask, but that's not the case today. Right? The next time you have an unelected bureaucrat like Anthony Fauci or Merrick Garland or James Comey, for that matter, who wishes to exercise political power that no one elected them to exercise, you need chief executives at the federal level and at the state level who will do what they're constitutionally empowered to do. To fire them. To fire the legions of people under them. To fire the managerial industrial complex around them. Because you know what? If somebody works for you and you can't fire them, that means they don't work for you. It means you work for them. It means you are their slave because you are accountable for what they do without having any responsibility for what they do. They will say that they have civil service protections in this country. Well, I personally view those as unconstitutional because Article 2 of the Constitution is higher in the hierarchy of our nation's laws than any law that Congress passed. But even if it were true that we have these civil service protections, it's got to be the top of a new conservative movement, a new pro-American movement's agenda in this country to repeal those civil service protections. And if you ask me, replace them with sunset clauses instead. To say that if you can't be a federal employee as the President of the United States for more than 8 years, that you probably shouldn't be an employee of the federal government for more than 8 years, no matter what position that you're serving in, and bring that fresh lifeblood not just into our country, but into our federal government. Now, one of the areas where I care about meritocracy is not just who rules in government, but the ideas that prevail in our society and in our government too. And we can only have a meritocracy of ideas in America if we embrace one of the foundational cornerstones of the great American experiment, and that is free speech. Free speech is a precondition, you see it right here, for the pursuit of truth. I personally believe free speech is also a precondition for peace in America. Because if you tell people they cannot speak, that is when they scream. But you tell people they can't scream, that is when they tear things down. And today we have in this country a form of censorship that's not what a lot of people on cable television like to call it, big tech censorship. I call it what it really is. It is government tech censorship. It is the government using private companies to do through the back door what government could not do through the front door under the Constitution, to censor politically disfavored speech. We need to abandon the slogans we memorized in 1980 saying that these are private companies free to decide what does and doesn't show up on their website. That's true if they're behaving as private companies, but if they're doing the dirty work of government, if it is state action in disguise, then the Constitution still applies, and these companies ought to be bound by the First Amendment to the Constitution of the United States when they're coordinating with the government to do what the government itself could not do directly.